Silenzio per favore.
So thanks for being here today. My name is Mirko, and I'd like to present empowering interactive technologies for children with neurodevelopmental disorder and their caregivers. This work is about technology. It's going to be about children and disability. Disability and play, playful education, and then about learning, clinicians, teachers, and parents, and in word, caregivers. And the idea is going to be to empower them. So the term empowerment will be cited quite often. The idea is to, as I said, empower technology, children, learning, caregivers to do their best, so to focus on many other stuff that I'm going to present today. I'm going to start with ability. What's the meaning for ability? Ability is the possession of the means or skill to do something. And if we consider disability should have a privative force. So it should mean not having a particular ability. So taking that part of ability apart. So if we consider disability, this term, we can have disability in two dimensions. One is location, so where the disability is, and can be from within, from inside the self, mixed, so a person with a wheelchair that should go on stairs, and then from without, like an astronaut in the space. And then there's another dimension, which is duration. The disability can be ephemeral, so it means that a parent carrying a child, that parent in that particular moment is having an inability to do something with his hands, with his arms. And then we come across from short term to long term many other kind of durations until the enduring disability. And in some cases, this is also called a chronic condition. I will focus on neurodevelopmental disorder. Neurodevelopmental disorder is a group of conditions with a set of developmental periods, and which is the period between 0 and 18, generally considered. And they produce impairments in intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior. And the common disorders are autism spectrum disorder, Down syndrome, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. And the key statistics say that 1.3% of the world population, about 97 million people, have this kind of disability, with a social cost of 798 billion euro per year, which is more or less compared to what happens in the US. So again, since I'm going to focus on children with neurodevelopmental disorder, if we see this graph, we can imagine that children are more or less in this part. So this means that generally it's a condition it's a chronic condition for years, and then the idea would be to have the children now from within and to see them going up until a location, a mixed location in which it's not just about them, but it's about us, it's about the society, it's about how we behave with these children, to being able to include them in the society. So the area of intervention, generally taken from the ICF classification, children in youth version, say there are many different areas to focus on. I will focus, in my process, in my PhD career path, I focus on 10 of those, starting from communication, the ability to express or to receive the language, then motor, the ability to move with your own body, understand your schema, and fine motor skills, so the skills of taking a pen, or those kind of small fine motor skills. Then we have cognition, the ability to memorize, to be paying attention, to clearly understand what's happening around. Socialization, the ability to socialize, to create a connection with others, to respect social norms. And then life skills, the ability to take part of the society in different skills, like even brushing your teeth, from wearing some clothes, and many others. Then imagination, the ability to create abstract concepts in your mind. Sensory processing, the ability to clearly understand different senses and filter them out, so to be able to clearly understand what's happening around the child. The emotion, the expression or the receipt of the emotion. Academic skills, the different skills that required to live in the society. And then behavior, so the ability to express and respect the behavior, adapting to social norms, and the behavior that is usually called adaptive behavior. So generally, the technologies we know nowadays are, can be categorized in different categories. I don't know if you clearly see these blocks, but the idea is that if we have in green the typical user and the user with disability, in blue you can have the large scale, so a technology that has been large scale developed or developed by an expert, and then we have up here configured by an expert or auto configuration. And generally, you have mainstream technology that work more or less in this way. So you have typical users that adapt to the technology, which is usually large scale. So it usually have a lower cost compared to the others we're going to see. And then, but then the individual still need to use this technology. So to be able to be enabled, for example, sending messages, he still needs to use that technology to be able to do it. Which is the opposite of instructional technology, in which is still large scale, but then if a user is configuring it, the user adapts to it, and then at one point the user will be able to learn to take something from the technology and live without that after a while. Then we have assistive. The assistive technology, again, is something that is being built in large scale, but then there must be someone that understands the technology, someone that understands the user, and try to match both technology users to create something that works. Again, in assistive technology, the idea is that the user is just enabled to do that. So, like communicating devices, in which I have an iPad, a tablet, I click and I can communicate, but then I still need to have an iPad to communicate. I didn't get anything out of this process. And again, then we have adaptive technology, in which something changes. It's the technology that now changes, because it's an expert that tweaks the technology, creates the technology for the user, but still the user is not learning, taking anything out after using it. And then we have reliability, the idea of again creating a technology by an expert, but then the user is going to be learning from it. In the last years, we also heard about, speaking about ability-based technology from Wobro, and he said, I can create something like a control panel at the beginning of the session, in which I track the user, understand how the user is done, and then at that point, I can adapt automatically to the user. This usually works well with vision disabilities, in which the computer can clearly understand the problem, like the color problem, this kind of stuff, and then automatically adapt. Which I found the technology very powerful, but not for my case, in which a cognitive disability is considered. So my research question during the path during these 3 years were, but really, technology and technological tools have the potential to increase fun, engagement, or ability, something. Do they have the potential to increase fun? Do they have the potential to increase the abilities for these children? And then if yes, how should designers design these technological tools? Is there a way they can read and clearly design what they want? And which stimuli should the designer provide now? Then again, how should developers develop these technologies? And how should researchers evaluate their effectiveness? And how can we provide the right tools to caregivers? Because we know that as our developers, software developers, we cannot create a technology and with a child with an NDD say, okay, just use it now. We need someone who is the mediator of this kind of exchange, which is usually the caregiver. So we need to empower the caregiver to be able to use the technology. And then why does one caregiver choose to adopt a technology while another resists? What is the influence of the social context on institutions? So these are some of the projects I've been able to design with therapists. There are more than 20 products for children with NDD. Often I develop them, some I just tutored students to build these technologies. And we evaluated most of them with more than 300 children. Obviously, for each project, it's probably 5 to 10 or 15. And I start by answering all the questions step by step. So first of all, do technology and technological tools have the potential to increase fun engagement or abilities in children with NDD? So I've done a survey of more or less 441 papers, and then I focus on 176, finding 115 projects, different projects, and I structured them according to a schema I found in research, and then I changed something just to have a better outcome. So areas of intervention, first of all, as I said, are the areas I've already explained to you. Then we have target and users, if the technology is targeted to individuals with NDD or the others. Then the sensory prompting, so how the technology is prompting, is showing is shown to the user. Then configurability, so if there is a configurability, if the configurability is via software or it's by design. Then the modality, so the way the user interacts with the technology. And then technology maturity, so if the technology is mature to be publicly available or just a design concept or a functional prototype. And at the end, the setting, so if the technology was aimed to be in schools, in homes or clinics, and evaluation method at the end. So if the evaluation method of this technology was just descriptive, exploratory until the empirical phase. And then I structured them in 6 interaction paradigms, starting from motion-based. Motion-based means using your own body and having the avatar projected on the screen in the virtual world and being able to track automatically the user's body to perform some actions, perform an activity. Then we have human-robot interaction, so the interaction with robots, or by robots. And then we have virtual reality, so the ability to use visors in virtual reality in which you wear a headset and you are in the virtual world, the immersive virtual world. Then multisensory environments, a way in which the room is shaping according to the child's needs. And then smart objects, so similar to robots, but in this way you have small objects like augmented toys, tangible toys, which you can have in your hands and you can play with them. And then touch-based, so the idea of touching and having different application based on touch. And I've done this survey, categorizing them according to these categories. So what I can say from motion-based, for example, quickly we have motor and cognition and socialization as the main part. Then we have image pictorial as a sensory prompting, video, and sound. But the most important one are always the one down here. So the design, again, the point is here, 21 and 54% of them are just design concept of functional prototypes. They are not publicly available. And the evaluation method is usually descriptive or even exploratory. So there is no empirical proof just for one, for example. If we focus on a robot, I'm sure you can find on the thesis clearly designed one, but just to give you an idea, the idea is again, we have robots that do mainly feedbacks, prompt, and social mediators. They are auditory sounds and vocals usually, and the visuals are lights and emotion, mainly. Then we have, again with robots, the morphism is usually 20% more or less, they are non-anthropomorphic, anthropomorphic, or even mascot character. The height is usually shorter than the user because generally it's thought that children interacting with robots, they are going to interact with them only if they are equal or shorter than the shoulder. And then configurability. Configurability is usually mainly via software, and the cost is medium to high. When I say cost medium to high, means that the robots cost more or less more than 1,500 euro or dollars. Again, it's the design some concept and functional prototype are the main ones, 73%, and they are mainly descriptive or exploratory. Then we have smart objects again. So just to focus on the last ones, they are again design concept and functional prototype, and the studies are mainly descriptive. Multisensory environments, again what we see is functional prototype, and here they are publicly available. But this is something that kind of abnormal in what's happening, because 93% are publicly available. This means there is a solution already in the market, but then if you look at the evaluation method, they are descriptive or exploratory. So there is a solution that seems to be working. I mean, many are adopting it, but there is no research that is empirically proving that that is a valid solution. And then we have a cost which is high. Cost high for multisensory environments means that is higher than 5,000 euros. And the configuration is very low. Wearable, again, the point is here it's kind of a new technology. Even if they started in 1970 of using wearable immersive virtual reality, but then after a while they stopped because these headsets were too heavy, too big. So we started back again when cardboard came out and all the other solutions came out. And many studies nowadays are evaluating acceptability of these headsets. They are mainly based on videos, and they are functional prototype and exploratory with very low configurability. The last one is touch-based. Again, what we can focus on, they are on the fact that the studies are descriptive or exploratory. At the end, what I can say, the answer to this question is yes. I mean, there are some strengths. Generally, what I found from papers are all these sentences, these words, especially they are motivational. There are some opportunities because they are motivational, they are adaptable, they are predictable, they are levelable, so you can change the activity according to the functional level of the child. They are omnisensorial or multisensorial according to what the child wants to receive, and then accessible, configurable, cost-effective, repeatable, and rateable. These are the main ones. But then if we focus on the weaknesses, we can find again that almost 80% of them are functional prototypes. They're not publicly available. So they say, okay, this technology is working, but how many people are using that technology? Not so many, just 19% of the solutions that have been in the research are going out in the market. And then the studies are usually descriptive and exploratory, with only 21% of them configurable. So this means that it seems like that software developers already know how to create that technology for that particular user, so they're okay, they don't need configurable tools. And then at the end, also about the fact that the cost is very high, generally, so from medium to high. So what I can say from the weaknesses and threats is that obviously if I'm going to focus on a solution that will get the best out of the potentials of these tools, but I should also solve some of these threats, weaknesses. So I will try to solve the weaknesses, the threats of isolation, of adoption, of cost profit, the ratio between cost and profit, the complexity of these technologies, the generalization, and the configurability and availability. And I try to solve it in the following slides. I will start from the fact that they're generally complex and they are configurable, but there must be a way to configure them, and there must be a way to design them in a clearly knowledgeable approach. So how should designer design these technological tools? So which stimuli should designer provide now? What I've done here is trying to understand, I don't know if you are probably, some of you are from the hypermedia website field, in which there are already some guidelines like Norman guidelines or different other heuristics to evaluate websites and tell, okay, this website is fine, this website is accessible, this website should be improved in this way. We don't have the same for technological tools for children. And the point is, I've tried to, again, do the literature review to clearly understand what we already know about the papers, the publication, the state of art. And I've done this by listing these design guidelines from existing companies' websites, published research articles or summaries. And I got more than 135 papers and more than 500 guidelines. You can find the thesis in the appendix. And I structured them according to different interaction paradigms, as I said before. Categories, generally the motor, visual, auditory, touch, tactile, visual-motor, and then different subcategories according to what they really need. The point is, this is just an example of the guideline you can find in the thesis. So generally you have an ID, then you have the category, the subcategory, and then what the guideline is suggesting with the reference. So for a researcher, it's going to be quite easy to read it and say, okay, I'm going to apply this guideline to my product, and I'm going to refer to these studies that have been proved this guideline, and then is where the guideline is applying to which interaction. So why were they being created? Because we need, step by step, we need a replicable and effective intervention, as I said before. We really need to create better and more usable intervention, especially replicable. So I can look at a paper and say, okay, I want to be able to build the same with the same design guidelines and see what happens, which usually happens in research, but then not in this field, as I found. Then I need peer-reviewed notions. Most of them guidelines are available nowadays, but I am lacking key information. So, for example, they are based on personal opinions of few experts. They do not provide a reference to support them. They do not provide any indication to whether a particular guideline represents a consensus of researchers. And then I need high influence. So to stimulate research into the areas, I need the greatest influence in the creation of usable and effective activities. Therefore, designers, they want to design and evaluate products. Therefore, technologists, they want to build better software architectures. And therefore, project managers, to set the priorities so they can use them as a checklist to draw their review. They can also create customized activities. And then they are for researchers. So to assess the research that has been conducted, to determine the need for additional research and to increase the validity. As a wrap up, I want you to consider this document, so the thesis document for the design guideline part, as a living one. I didn't want to, get all the guidelines and okay, I've done the job, but now you should use these guidelines. So the idea was, as they've done the same for heuristic in the website 20 years ago. They started adding some guidelines, having the old guidelines, and then having panels, having people considering them, matching them, compacting them when needed. The guidelines do not guarantee that every intervention will be effective, of course, but I need to say that. And then the greatest benefits will accrue to those who create effective processes for the implementation. So it's not about I follow 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then it's going to be fine. That's not the point. And even researchers should produce constant revisions that improve these the guidelines, and adopting individuals and organizations. This is one of the most important. Should consider adding local guidelines, because these are main general guidelines, but then there should be added local guidelines to the needs of the community. And the designer has to be knowledgeable. So it's not something about, I read it, I clearly understand it, now I'm ready. So as I said, you should recognize this document as a living one. What I can say from the design guidelines maybe is something that HRI and tangible objects are the main, they have more correspondence in the guidelines, and even motion-based and multisensory environments and wearable immersive virtual reality have many guidelines in common. And what I also found, probably I knew before doing it, but the point is even screen-based guidelines are usually the most used even in the other interaction parameters. And then these are the categories how they connect. So categories and subcategories, what we know is that maybe they are for general tasks, and they go on clarity, on cooperation, on customizability, and on learnability. So we need to learn to do it. So the point is now, how can we provide the right tools? So we probably gave designers the ability to develop the products, and now we want to have caregivers in general, to be able to use these tools. When I say caregivers, it means clinicians, so generally professional experts. Then I speak about teachers, school teachers, and I speak about parents. And the idea is to support them in the playful learning of the child. And so there was in Inclusion Press in 1970, there was this kind of method which is called a circle of friends, in which a child was asked to draw a circle of his friends. The innermost, so the closest circle is the one of the family, and then step by step going out there is the one that are probably in the social network. So you have friends here, friends of friends, and the social network. This is generally what a child, a neurotypical child, will draw, while a caregiver of a child with NDD will draw more or less this. So this means that the child with NDD usually has his family, of course, but then at one point he just has a friend, and on the outer side circle we have all the people who are paid to be with the child. And I feel like if we put technology inside the circle, then you can have inclusion of both ends. So you have the child being able to communicate with the community, and the community being able to be in the circle of the child. So that's why when I say caregiver, I consider all the circles of these caregivers. So the parents, the school teachers, and even social assistants and psychologists. I've done a requirement solicitation from the state of art, as I said before, but even from my case studies and from primary and secondary research, what I found from, for example, support teachers is that too often we tend to separate roles. So the need of creating a community around the child to be able to provide the best learning outcome. Then when I try to interact with my son, repeating the actions suggested by the therapist, I wonder whether I'm doing the job right or wrong. So the idea of, there are some parents who want to be able to be with the children, to be able to have them using some tools for their children, but then they wonder if they are just confusing their son, for example. Or I'm worried not to be able to help my child again, or I wish we were taught now how to be therapists ourselves. And we know that in children's life, play is a crucial role, takes a crucial role to activity, experience, autonomy, and inclusiveness. And what I feel is that this process, which seems very, very smooth, has some problems when facing children with NDD. That's why I try to focus on the term empowerment in a way that when children use the tools, they must be empowered, not just in using them, but be empowered to do something else, not just, so with the support, with the mediation of the tool. And that's why I focus on a empowerment intervention model, which I then called EIM, which is funded by Child's Mental State and Tools Enable Feature. The idea is that the basic assumption is that there is a process in which all children go through when they interact with the technology, and generally with a tool, with a toy, which is very similar to neurotypical children at one point, but then you need to consider many other steps before, which generally go very smooth with the neurotypical children. So there is a preparation phase. You need to tell the child what you are going to do. You need to prepare him. Then the technology should provide safeness and predictability. So a technology that does not provide safeness and predictability is going to fail, and you are not going to be able to do the therapy or the educative session again. This happens, for example, with Theo, the robot. So we went there with a robot of this doll, and we asked the child, okay, meet Theo, so you're going to interact with it. And he was like kind of concerned because he had a motor impairment, so he was not able to run in the case the robot started working, started moving. So he thought, in this case, the robot was unpredictable, and the fact that it was unpredictable, it was also unsafe for him in his imagination, and this led to the child to go out for the class. Then there is a phase of relaxation. The relaxation phase is the phase when the child feels relaxed in using the technology. And if the technology provides confidence and effectiveness, then the child enters a phase of a state of affection. So the child now creates a bond with the tool, with the toy. Then we have if the tool provides usability and physical affordance. So the affordance of being able to understand how should keep, how should end, how should care this toy without even a cognitive action, then you're going to be engaged. And this is the part where generally all children, all neurotypical children start from. If you're going to give a game to the child, generally they start from here, unless the controller, for example, is not so affordable to use. And then they go on a cognitive affordance, so they know how to use the controller to do something. So they associate a meaningfulness to the experience, to the action, so to reach a level of autonomy. And this happened with different projects I've been able to follow in the therapeutic centers. For example, with the robots, the model was the same, and even with multisensory environments. And this happened. I found that when I went there for the first time, I asked them this kind of model. They said, "Okay, no, but we know how to do this, and this. Okay, but where should I find the reference to clearly understand how to build the technology to follow this model?" And there was anything. I mean, I asked more than 30 people in the field, and nobody was able to reply. Of course, if some from you have a psychological background, you can find many other macro psychological theories, like the PERMA theory, the Maslow motivation model, the flow theory, the semiotics, different other theories. And I'm sure that you will find many connections with them, but not something that applies to the therapies. And then the last one is about the flow. For the gamers, this flow, this is a concept that is kind of quite famous from the Bulgarian psychologist Gelsomini. And his work is about creating a flow. So it's a ratio between challenges and skills to follow a flow. Then if you look at this one, and you take this one in a linear way, you will find again boredom, relaxation, worry, and anxiety as the flow. And you put the model on top, you see more or less the same stuff. So you have a preparation before the flow, then you have safety and predictability, so to create, not to create worry and anxiety. Then you have a state of empathy. Here is the apathy, so it's the opposite in this way. And then we have affection, and then step by step you enter a state of flow. So it seems like there is a state of flow even for these children, and we need to build technologies that go to this phase. How should developers develop these technologies? Again, I've done a requirements elicitation to clearly understand what they really needed. And then again, they want connections They don't know how to help them, even if there are resources. Most good teachers and parents do not know which program to adopt. And so I've worked on the experience journey on these stakeholders, and I found that, for example, for care supervisors, caregivers, care builders, and care receivers, we have different phases. So for care supervisors, the idea is that I need to diagnose the child, then I need to define the therapy, initiate, evaluate, and continue the therapy if the therapy is working. For caregivers, I enter in a state of awareness. I know the technology, then I adopt it, and this is the most important phase in which we need to work. Adopt and then appropriate. So they need to appropriate the technology to be able to configure it, and then evaluation and diffusion of this technology. For care builders, so me or designers, the idea is that we need to design for all, but we need to be able also to configure for some, to play for one, for that particular child needs and preferences, test for some again, and deploy for all. So only in this model we have results, but also we have adaptation. And then for the care receiver is about perception, development, playful learning, generally even sometimes in a topic therapy. So the software platform is for all of them, is for all of the users. And I wanted to show this layer of architecture just to clearly understand where all the users match with the technology. So we need obviously a data layer, a software hardware layer to interact with these technologies, a device toolkit to be able to connect to different devices, an interaction layers with so different interaction paradigms, an application layer, and the activity layer, which are the main ones I'm going to focus, and then an analytics and sharing center, so to be able to share these technologies or these activities. This is another way of showing. Again, we have an activity player which is getting from the editors and the configurators the activity, or you can create your app by making it. I'm going to show you some images focusing on this part, just to be able to focus on that. And, but before doing that, I want to show you some small pieces of what I've done. So, for example, obviously this is also done with some other students and in our lab. So this is, for example, is reflex, in which they need to put the shapes or the letters on the playground, and the tablet is automatically understanding. Then we have motion-based, in which the child has to get the stuff appearing in the virtual world. Then we have Theo. We have the magic ball, in which the child are connected using this ball, this magic ball. We have volleyball, for example, in which a child is learning how to apply fine motor skills. We have magic rooms, so in which multi-sensory environments in which they apply their motors, their ideas to the room, and the room is changing accordingly. And then we have wearable immersive virtual reality, in which children try these puzzles and feel immersed in a world, and the therapist is able to see what's happening in the puzzle. I will focus on this one to show the potential of the software platform. So generally what we are going to see is a therapist close to the child. The child is using the virtual reality, but the therapist can see what the child is looking at, and even understanding what's happening in the session. So the idea, for example, is that the child is going to use this one, and he's going to point the protagonist, so for example, this rabbit in this way, and the therapist is going to see the same stuff. As you see, if the child is not focusing on the rabbit, then the story stops. When the child focuses on it, then the story proceeds. This is a nice way to clearly understand automatically, understand the attention of the child, and clearly understand if the child is following the instruction. So let's imagine this. We have a mechanics level in which I can say, okay, if I focus on something, the protagonist, then I'm going to move to character 1, character 2, character 3. This is what is seen from a technological point of view. This is the logic of the activity. But me, as a developer, if I build this one, and then I declare what I want from here, then I can create some levels that are automatically created, so to be able to configure this, and then I have this. So in this case, what the therapist is doing is changing these parameters, choosing what they want, and then at one point play without even knowing who developed this, and by knowing that the child prefers this bear and this fox and this. So these graphics precisely configured for the child. And again, I can configure it, so I can automatically understand if the child is performing well because it's automatically traffic, so I can understand the attention of the child. See, in another way, if you don't want to, if the developer doesn't want to create the idea, so the mechanics of this, for example, activity, there is another way. I've developed some of these tools, for example, the one for the room and the one for dolphin SEM. And I've worked in the development with some of the physics students about virtual reality maker. So the idea generally is that you want to empower caregivers to define the logic, the mechanics of the activity. So for example, in a room, you want the caregiver to say, okay, if this happened, then I want this, this, and this, this. And we based on our approach on the Scratch, on the Blockly interfaces, because we thought that they were the easiest way to communicate with therapists. But then we found also that it was not so easy, so we focused on something easier, like having just images without text to configure, for example, activities in SEM. And then we focus again with virtual reality to create video, immersive video, which are linked between one and the other. So I feel like by using this solution, it's about 1 year that we are using the solution in our lab, and many applications are born with the same solution in mind, with the same idea in mind, and things are, I feel like they are easier, especially because the therapists now call us and say, I want to try this new, and then we send a link, or even they have the activity already in their profile, without going there, without spending too much time in teaching them because they are already in the process. But the point is, how can they, the new ones, how can they adopt them? How can they, what's the influence of the social context on the institution adoption process? So if you focus on the child is usually connected on the parent, with the clinician with the admin, the parent with the parents' network, and the administrator with the government, with the World Health Organization, with the mass media. And if we focus on the potential adopter, so the adopter that wants to use the particular innovation, we have different theories that work in this way. What I want to show in this big picture, even quite crowded, is that there is also a process for the empowerment framework. The process of all the stuff, all the numbers that you see here, have a clear idea of, okay, with this contribution I'm going to give in my thesis, I want to solve the connection with this and with this actor and this actor. With this, I want to solve the perceived usefulness and those kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to focus too much to deepen the talk of this, but I'm sure you can read through the thesis and find a very nice approach, a potential approach. So my work generally, my contribution starts from the empowerment framework and go on 4 directions. One is design guidelines, as I said. One is the intervention model, so the way I use the technology, I am empowered using the technology. Then the software platform and the adoption guidelines. And they are connected to any other stuff I've done, as you can see from my thesis, all the literature review and the state of art of different technologies for children. So again, we come back on the first slides, saying, okay, we know all of these technologies. I feel like we need something else. We need empowerment technology, which is more or less getting the best out of all of the others, one, in which it's large-scale development, which is, okay, fine, the cost is not too much, is configured by an expert, or better, is empowered, is adapted to the user. But then at one point, the idea is that the user is finally empowered, is finally enabled to express his ability without the use of that technology. So it's a mix of ability-based, rehabilitative, instructional, mainstream, hopefully the best of them. So again, if we focus on that, we saw that assistive technology generally focus on this one. Sometimes they even focus on children with NDD, but the idea is that with this solution, at least my idea, what I can see, I hope you will see in the next future, these children will move up and come to the mixed location, which I hope will happen very soon. So my research partner has been developing, so as you can see, the balls over there, the points are the publication I've done from 2015 to 2016 of just three of the interaction paradigms, and then step by step of focus on the others. The idea was not to focus on just one particular interaction paradigm, because I wanted to do transversal, I wanted to clearly understand the whole process that happens in the institution, in families, in general in society. And that's what happens next. So next I want to start, so I've already published a journal paper, I want to publish more because I feel now competent to express my thought in some of the interaction paradigms. And possibly the idea is to move on and to build the empowerment framework in which many users are going to adopt and many users are going to try, so to improve their lives in some way. My challenger would be that anyone, anywhere, at any time can be empowered by these interactive projects, ideally suited to their specific abilities. And I hope I gave just a little piece of everything, but I hope I will empower in some way their lives. Thank you.
Any question?
I've never witnessed such a prolonged applause at the end of a talk. So I think it's both inspiring, and you should feel very proud for the work you've done. I know you know this, so I'll just reiterate that you've done work that's very broad. And I think, in my experience, there are two very different kinds of successful PhD careers. Ones that take a very specific topic, very well-defined scientific questions, and explore it in excruciating detail. And the cynical view of something like that is one person knows everything there is to know about absolutely nothing, a very small topic. What you've done is an extremely broad view of an extremely large area. And the cynical view of that is that you end up at the end of this knowing very little about a lot of things. I think both are valuable research contributions. I'm interested in, I'm going to ask you a question, get an answer for where you want to go, and then I'm going to do a follow-on question. So, 5 to 10 years from now, what kind of career do you want to be in?
So I want to be in a career which is both on the, I feel like research is something we still need, so I want to be a researcher, but I want to apply these ideas to the, I mean, as you said, clinical and cynically, the idea is that the commercial part of the industry is great because they deploy, they do stuff, so these stuff are already existing. So mixing both of them, having something, and I agree. So my idea was to develop a tool in which the people who precisely know what they want they can use the tool and they can deploy it.
Right. Okay,
So-
well, I think I know enough from your answer that you want to go into a research career.
Exactly.
So, say you're going to start supervising your own students. You give them your thesis to read.
No, I won't. I probably won't. but-
I promise you. So, yes, it's very natural to feel embarrassed by your own thesis. I'm very embarrassed by my own thesis. But your students are going to want to read your work. Let's assume they take that idea and they say, I want to do my thesis inspired by your work. How would you guide a student or pick a particular small piece of the work that you've explored here, and how would you advise them to do it in more depth than you have done?
And so, an example, since the lower levels of this tool are already, they are used by my students, I can answer because it happens in the last year. And the idea was that the students were coming in, they had an idea of using one particular interaction paradigm because they liked, maybe, and then I gave them the communication how to interact with the tool without giving them a thesis because I didn't have any thesis. And then the point was, okay, now by knowing that you are in this, you are using this framework, now you are able to focus on that particular, for example, the virtual reality is something that I didn't develop the application of the virtual reality. I had the student do it because he knew about the solution, so he was able to get those results on the top, so the attention just because he used the technology and he did it in a faster way compared to what he would have done doing it alone.
Okay, so one way you might turn that into a research contribution, this is almost like a software engineering contribution. You're providing a tool that's going to allow people to more quickly come to a product that is more effective at doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly, from software developers, but even for, I feel, from the designers and even from psychology side. So they know that logging into the system, they have a broad variety of applications they can use, and then they can effectively play and work, even a cost-effective way, because that's another point.
So, thank you for your work. That is very, very inspiring, very useful, and congratulations for all this stuff. And I'm wondering about your guidelines. You defined 500 guidelines. But how do you think that they could be really actually used by designers? You are thinking about restructuring them in some way or providing something more?
Thanks for the answers. I think they are not ready for designers yet. The idea will be to have some experts to meet to clearly understand even the contradictions between them, because there are some contradictions. And the idea is step to step to create a website or whatever solution to show the entire community what can be done and what has to be done in which way. And then at one point, having the community to evaluate which guideline is most important or more important than one other. So we are at the very first step of this, and I feel like by building this community, we will be able to create solutions that are clearly informed by some studies, which is not happening nowadays. Nowadays we are like almost closing our eyes, listening to different requirements and say, okay, probably it's going to work, let's try it. So that's why I wanted to define this kind of path for designers.
I have a question. So, congratulations for your achievements, first of all. And second, I wonder this. I go back to her question about guidelines. So, I read the thesis, there are hundreds of guidelines. So, the cynical point of view, just to go to Gregory, is that guidelines are like ideas, dime a dozen. So, you can actually do guidelines, and actually, if you go to C++ guidelines for comments, you'll find hundreds of versions of them. And So the question is, suppose I'm an implementer actually. So suppose I go to your guidelines and say, okay, I want to revolutionize my approach to building this type of software. And then I decide to follow your guidelines, but they are 500. So there is
No way they can find the right ones or
yeah.
the one
So, but at the same time, I see your work and I say, oh my God, you had 300 plus children, right? And you had 5 applications. So, did you ever try to do at least on the top guidelines an A/B testing? Like, I take these 5 children, I don't use these guidelines, these 5 children. Did you do that? Because in the thesis it's not there. So, did you have any result? And in the paper, I didn't see them.
So what I've done generally is eliciting guidelines, eliciting requirements, and adding guidelines. The next step would be then comparing them. What we know till now is that if we do this stuff, so we know that there are some wrong ways of doing things.
Why do you know that?
Because, for example, if you follow the model, if you don't prepare the child to do something before it, then you're going to lose more children than when you. And I've done this kind of test, but I cannot say A/B testing. I can say that while developing some tools, without doing this kind of process before, then many users were rejected the technology. While doing that, something was happening. So I have some ideas. I'm not saying that these guidelines generally do have an empirical study behind, but that's what I'd like happening in the future.
So can I follow on with that? I didn't recall that your guidelines were organized in a way similar to your framework, your EIM.
Yeah.
Framework. But what I heard you saying was that that framework suggests places where the guidelines can help you advance.
Exactly. So that's why I started this process. So even if I am in the early first phase, I structured the guidelines so to clearly match in all the phases of where the technology should go for the session, and then I structured them in different ways to see them in different ways. And I feel like a designer that wants to start for the first time, maybe she has an idea, so I want to build a product which is tangible, which is want to use cooperation, which wants to use therapists in cooperation, then you select this, and you have not 500, but maybe 50 of those to focus, and maybe use just 10 then. There is still a filtering process to clear understand. Again, I'm not saying that those guidelines are the do's and the others are the don'ts, but step by step.
So one thing that you might have a future student do is to go through your 500 or so guidelines and say, which one of these are relevant for, in your empowerment framework, you got this preparation phase, or the transition from preparation to relaxation. Which are the guidelines that actually help you move toward relaxation? That kind of organization, because my understanding is that empowerment intervention model, that really is your.
Exactly, it is.
All the other things, the related work, that's what everyone else has done, those guidelines, that's what everyone else has said.
And even some on ours.
Or from your own work, but really the kind of novel contribution here in terms of guiding people and what you should think about when you're designing an intervention is your EIM. So you should try.
EIM for the therapists.
Right. So you should try to figure out ways that those specific guidelines from the past map into your empowerment framework. Because for one thing, I found it very easy to understand the EIM. I found it very hard to understand 500 guidelines in 20 different categories. Very hard to get your head around.
Especially if you have a paper.
Well, right, and if you gave a developer that appendix, they're not going to read it because they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
But if you gave them your 7 or 8 steps of your model, then you say, oh, okay, this is how I get to a successful model, and there's a beginning, there's an end, and here are the things to do to move along.
And again, this is something that is already happening for the websites. And this is something they have, nowadays they have 10 precise guidelines that you should build the website in this way, then otherwise you're going to fail. So that's the idea of giving a relative importance of each guidelines in the future. That's another contribution we would like to do in following years.
If I may add something along this vein, I think the problem here is related to what in software engineering are design patterns and how to organize them. So there are thousands of design patterns, and people are struggling about how to organize them. And there are multiple ways to organize a body of patterns by problems and by process moments. So I agree with you that should be one possibility is to organize along the process. So where technologies, what your technology is going to support. But there are, which is a sort of problem. So my problem is for technology in the first step. Another, so then there are many other classification schemes. So I'm just saying that you're perfectly right. I'm not going to defend him, just to add a comment that is to be a research designer which can follow some methods in adopting design patterns, for example. Because design pattern at the very end is a guideline, problem associated to a solution with examples and with references to existing work and to justify it. But I also to add that for me, guidelines are intrinsically heuristic and qualitative, so debatable by definition, like design patterns. That's why I see many analogies with that field. But you're right, at least having ways to organize it along multiple classification dimensions definitely a need. And I don't think that your suggestion of organizing it along this process model that is here to find. Process model like the EIM model is certainly something that can be used. Rather than organizing or complementary to organizing by technology, by interaction paradigm, by user, or by something else.
I'm not sure about design patterns, at least if you talk in general, yes. But if you check out, for instance, design pattern, there is a very nice book, Game Programming Design Pattern, which is basically software design pattern applied to games. They're actually measurable in some sense, and very in depth. When you go in depth, they are measurable. You can say, I can use this model, and this will allow me to save this many calls or this many referenciation and this many messages sent out. So it's actually, and that's why I asked him a question, because if you take one of these parts and then you consider those guidelines, it would have been nice to have at least in one small part some, not in depth, because with this broadness we cannot go so much in depth. But on the other hand, if I say, okay, you know what, we tried once and on a group of 20 children, 10 and 10, and I can say that these guidelines, blah, 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 they actually had an impact on 98% of the children, which is obviously 90% is something like this, but it actually could be.
This is something that came to my mind.
Measurable, at least measurable to say, I can tell you that because this is actually
I agree on the need that there should be some empirical foundation on that. But even in this specific field, which control experiments are very difficult by definition, what you are suggesting are developing two systems with two different guidelines and make a comparison. You know,
you suggested several times. You suggested sometimes, right? And I mean, in my psychology, they do it.
Sorry?
In psychology, in experimental psychology, they do it. I actually
but doing control experiments with children with disabilities, there is an enormous variability among subjects. I mean, it's good. I understand that it make a lot of sense with games developed for neurotypical persons. No, it's just very complex and demanding.
The other point is about, I thought about this many times. The point was the fact if I know that someone else is suggesting me to do this, and I do the opposite, I am with a child. So I feel like I don't want to test the child. And I'm with therapists many times, and generally we speak about ethical concerns about the fact that generally we try technologies, we try it for 1 year, and then we don't apply what we learn, and then we don't give them the tools that were working. So I feel like I'm not happy to test in this way. I feel like if I know that someone else told me that I shouldn't do that, I don't really know if I really want to do the opposite, especially with children. I know that probably.
But then before you were there, they were not doing it. So you had data before they were doing it. So I go to an hospital, right? And then I'm doing some therapy, and I want to propose something new, right?
Right.
To know that by something, if they're going to want to give you the new medicine, they are not having the new medicine before. I'm not saying you can cure this illness, and I know that I can cure this illness. So please, let's take 10 patients, and I want to cure your illness, but I'm just to try what happens. That's your position. My position is I go to there, I go there, and I say, for instance, I do rehabilitation, right? And I say, how many minutes can they resist before they say they are bored, right? Initially, you can measure it right now, right? You can say they can really do this thing 5 minutes, then they get bored, and say, oh my God, I don't want to do it anymore. Then you put your system, and then you measure it. And then it's not that you are not taking away something, right? You are measuring before your intervention, which is actually kind of different, right? It's not that you are eliminating something. It's not that if your guidelines are good, I go to the hospital and they tell me that using your guidelines are good. Why should I say, oh no, this is crap, I'm not going to use it? Why should I take the responsibility about that, right? But you
definitely. I mean,
you
to
go
create
there.
innovation, you need to test something new, and it's not sure that you are going to apply the right guidelines every time. But sometimes these guidelines come from psychology, and those people say, this shouldn't happen. So that's why I've never felt okay in doing it. But thanks for the suggestion, because I think
You cannot say right now
in
what is
some
the
way
impact of your guidelines, right?
No, of course not. What I can say is simply they are coming from empirical studies or from studies that have proved their work.
Actually, you said in the beginning that most of the things are respiratory or respiratory, they are not empirical.
No, but these guidelines come from the psychology side.
Okay.
So generally, they are applied to some other studies that are empirical.
Okay.
So they are not the same paper.
Reasonable. Any other question before we go to my office and discuss private democratic stuff?
I would like to move to another topic, the end user development topic. You know, I'm interested in, and I'm curious about the problems and difficulties you encounter in proposing your solutions for, especially caregivers, parents, and so on, to customize the software, the tools that you propose.
So there's it's a very broad question. Generally, people have different knowledge, obviously, and the point is, how can you understand if that person you are going to interact with is going to tell you exactly what she needs and the other one? So generally, I face some problems at the beginning in telling them what the tool is about. And as soon as they understand the tool, then step by step they suggest what can be configured. And then at that step, I tried to offer them two solutions. One is about, okay, now that you know generally how the tool is working, configure some stuff, or now that you really know how the tool is working, why don't you create a new activity, a new mechanics for the next activity to be done. So, and I went on both trails just because I feel like there are at least two kinds of users. I mean, there are more than, but there are some that don't want even to touch technology, so I'm not considering those. But these two kind of users, for example, we went to therapeutic center in Rome, and they are completely fine in using the tool to create their activities for the magic room. If you use the same tool in a therapeutic center in Milan, they say, no, I don't know how to do it, you should do it for me. So you see, it really depends on the age of the therapist, on their literacy, different stuff, and I feel like it's a way I try to solve this problem.
Yes, if I can follow on just a bit from that. I think you aren't really at end user programming in what you've done, but in a couple of the examples that you talked about, you've narrowed the gap between your end users the language they use to communicate back to you that makes it easy for you to change to meet what they want. And so that actually, and that's a valuable contribution for them to be able to, from a domain perspective, speak to you in terms that you can easily translate into changes in the software.
We call it pseudo language, so that's the idea. So having a common dictionary to speak, and that's what happened before doing this tool, was going to the center and say, okay, what do you want? And they say, okay, I want that this child is able to do this. Okay, no, let's focus more on what you want. So you want, when this happens, what you want to teach. When this other happens, what do you want to teach? So step by step, we narrowed down to clearly create a common dictionary, and then at one point the tool came up saying, okay, what do you want? And the therapists were able in some way to say what they want.
So let me ask a concrete question about that. When you showed the virtual reality headset and you showed that game with the rabbit, you said that the child had to focus on the rabbit for the story to move
For the
forward.
old school, yeah.
Whose idea was that? That you need to get the child to focus on some main character in order for the story to evolve?
The therapist.
Okay.
So we said, we would usually go to the therapist and say, okay, with this technology we are able to do this, this, and this. And then we find sweet spots between, like points in which what we can do is what they'd like to do, even if sometimes they don't even know what they want. But then, step by step, you clearly understand that what they wanted in that particular case was to focus on attention. They want to focus on selective attention. They want to focus on sustained attention. So having something that is there with the background, that is going to be selective attention. If that one is moving and the person is following the character, then it's going to be sustained attention. How can we automatically track that part? Because that's another part. We want to automatically track because we want the caregiver to be with the child, not with the notebook writing down stuff. So all this stuff needs to happen, and then at one point the therapist say, okay, now this has to be changed, the character has to change, Step by step, we define the mechanics, then we define the graphics for each particular child, and then at one point we are at a level of abstraction in which we are able to create these tools.
Yeah, I can't help but remember, I'm reminded when my oldest son, who was very much younger, he was using some of these kindergarten-age interactive programs. And if you didn't do anything, and that was keyboard, if you didn't do anything, a little character would pop into the corner that was intended for neurotypicals to say, come on, do something. But my son actually liked that little character popping out. So he wouldn't do anything and he'd get really happy when the rabbit would pop out there. So he would just sit there waiting for the rabbit to pop out. Maybe what you're talking about here is a way to try to, if you know what they're interested in looking at, you can use that to help move them toward doing other things.
It happens to me many other times when developing technology, which we created some sounds. The sounds of one stuff were better than more engaging than the other ones, and then children were happy to do their own sound. These things happen, and that's why it's a way we test in this. But there can be easily a guideline saying probably with the wrong. You shouldn't play a wrong reward, or if you play a wrong reward, it shouldn't be high. The volume shouldn't be higher than the right stuff. These kind of things usually happen for many games and for many tests.
Also the order limitation stuff. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much again. Da me.
Siamo qua.
Da me. Così abbiamo, anche perché dobbiamo stampare, da qua non si vede.
Ah, già è vero, ok.
E non per quello, mi vedi?